Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack. Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
With practice and qualifying done from Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Brian and I are in to get you set for the Pennzoil 400 live from Las Vegas. As you notice, our backdrops look different. Brian is in Las Vegas. I am in Las Vegas. We are recording in separate rooms, but we are making it work. We are going to be clicking around, and we don't have our normal 7-screen setup, so please be patient if it's not as fluid as normal. But Brian and I were both at the track all day today, in the media center, watching the Xfinity race, watching practice and qualifying, talking to the drivers, all that good stuff. Brian, how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. I mean, yeah, I don't really have to explain much to you because you were there today, but we got to see some interesting stuff. Practice, Group A, they had that damn caution, which always throws a wrench in whatever data you're going to try to compile, because allowing the tires to cool down, going back out for another full run on the same set of tires, it's going to be different than, say, Group B, who went out and just ran long without having some rando caution occur. So, and then we had qualifying, which who the hell would have thought that Michael McDowell would put the thing on pole, and Kyle Larson, William Byron, Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, all those guys would be qualifying near or outside the top 10.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very interesting. I kept waiting. I was like, oh, well, early, we talked to some of the drivers about the new format of the basically one qualifying attempt. We're not doing Group A and B and then having a finish from there. And some of them liked it. Like Ross is like, I prefer it. I could qualify. I would have probably gotten a few more poles if we just done the first run, but because we do 2 runs, I don't necessarily have the same speed. And then other guys are kind of iffy about it or confused why the change was made in the first place. But yeah, it was a weird experience. I was like, oh, for sure. Like once McDowell put down that lap, that once Bell or the Hendrick guys or JGR or somebody would come along. Of course, Joseph Logano puts it on the front row. We've talked about the guy starting second and their ability to win this race. We'll talk about that. Obviously, we'll jump in and look at DraftKings, run through the whole full slate. Unfortunately, we can't actually enter any contests from out here in Vegas, but we will go through the whole slate, give you some thoughts, build some lineups, all that good stuff. With that being said, Brian, let's jump in. Let's talk some DraftKings, and let's build some lineups. I will do this, and I will move this, and we will go through it. So, Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, William Byron. Those are your 4 drivers, 10K or above. All, as we mentioned, kind of starting in that mid-pack range. Do you have a favorite or 2 from that range?
Well, I think the first order of business is to announce, as we were getting ready to do this, Bob Pockris tweeted out that Christopher Bell and John Hunter Nemechek, who was already starting in the back, are both going to the rear after changing out a part that is not approved by NASCAR. And so Christopher Bell's starting position is obviously going to be much worse than 13th. So you already have the built-in loss of points, which to me almost eliminates him, unless you think he can recover and drive it from the back with Ryan Blaney to the front.
Yeah, I think his obviously his roster percentage is going to be adjusted pretty heavily. But if you think by the end of stage 1 he can get up inside the top 10 and be a legitimate contender at the end of the race, which I mean, after winning 3 in a row, who knows? But I think that's going to be an interesting leverage play. I don't know if that's the lever I want to pull, but it definitely has some interesting kind of thoughts. Larson starting 10th. Obviously, we know how dominant he can be here, but didn't look incredible in qualifying. Obviously, his practice was fine, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Like, he's going to
might have been hoodwinked with Larson the same way we were with Bell last week in Phoenix, where post practice and qualifying, a lot of people were a little bit down on Bell, including myself. You went into the race expecting these certain things, and then he didn't look great in practice, and then he goes out and he proves that he's the best one there. And I think the same thing could be said for Larson, who he's on record as saying multiple times he loves coming to this track. It's one of his better tracks. I mean, he absolutely destroyed the field here last spring. So, we'll see, because like you were saying, like, he disappointed in qualifying, but he's probably going to show up. He's going to be a car running up front by the end of the day.
Yeah, and obviously we'll flip over and talk outright betting odds here in a minute, but I mean, he's the clear favorite pretty much across whatever book you want to look at. So there's a reason why he is. There's a lot of excitement and anticipation. Obviously, he will be popular, but maybe that's good chalk. Tyler Reddick, William Byron are two other guys. Byron's somebody that I think impressed in practice. Didn't qualify as well as maybe we thought. Obviously has a really good track record in Vegas. If not for the bag last year, maybe he wins the race. Obviously has won here before, has been, a contender multiple times. I think he's another one that's a super easy click at the top of the board.
Yeah, I think Byron is somebody who, despite not qualifying as good as what we thought he was going to do, he still performed admirably in practice and still starting inside the top 10. That by no means indicates like, oh, maybe he lost a step or two. I mean, maybe Hendrick decided to set up more for race pace, which is interesting, and not go for the single lap quality thing, which, I mean, you saw out of like Eric Jones, Michael McDowell, of course, Joey Logano. Every single year we come here, he qualifies really well, and we all know how that works out. So yeah, I think Byron in this group is probably the most enticing, just because you're saving a bunch of money. He's the safest option also, in my opinion.
Yeah. Let's jump into the 9Ks where we have Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, and Chase Elliott. Ryan Blaney is going to be a cash must, but in tournaments, he's going to be very popular. He's going to be the number one driver per win the race in terms of ownership. And probably for good reason. He's incredible here. He looked like he had a rocket ship, and if not for spinning out in the corner that he told us he feels like he's the best in of the whole field, he's probably qualifying really well and probably up front with Joey. So obviously an easy click, but if you want to get unique, you want to get different, this might be a lever that I pull where I just fade him, and maybe not in every lineup, but in a lot of my tournament lineups, I'm happy to go elsewhere. And if he shoves it to me and is awesome and is flies through the field, maybe makes couple of good pit stops, maybe does some strategy calls and ends up in front by the end. I can't say I'll be shocked, but I feel like it's a big mountain to climb, and with so much of the field on it, it's an easy pivot for me in my tournaments.
Yeah, and I think too, you run the risk with, as good as Ryan Blaney is here, starting in the back, starting with the squirrels to begin the race. I mean, restarts and the start of the race are very aggressive. There's a non-zero chance that Blaney gets caught up in somebody else's mess because he's of starting where he is, and your lineup is dead from the get-go along with everybody else. So, I still think he's a good play just because he's going to be strong. He's probably going to be a top 10 car. I would not be surprised if he's running near the top 5, but that mountain is so steep that it does make me lean towards going to other options in this range, which kind of starts off with the guy at the top of this range, and that's Denny Hamlin starting 15th, who he looked really good in practice. This is a guy who we know he does not qualify or practice well traditionally here, but on Sundays, he always performs. And so I don't know how much leverage you would get there by, say, avoiding Blaney and going with Denny, or maybe trying to put in two of them and having Denny a little bit safer just because he's not with the squirrels. But yeah, I don't mind avoiding Blaney and going a little bit further down the board with people that are starting a little bit further up, but maybe have a similar type of ceiling if they hit, which it's less likely, but a similar type of ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Win the Races info right now, and obviously you guys should all subscribe to it. It's a really useful tool for building DraftKings lineups. But yeah, I mean, Denny's I've obviously added him to the card pre-practice. We just got back from the Superbook not too long ago where I added an outright ticket to him. So I am on the Denny Hamlin experience this week. Not traditionally a guy that I'm very excited about, especially in terms of winning, but I'm pretty pumped about his potential this week and think he can be a legit contender. Obviously, he's in a range where you spend a little bit more, but you get up to a Larson, you get up to a Reddick, or you go down to maybe like a Chase Elliott or a Ross Chastain. So interesting range. I'm curious to see how much of the field gets to him. But I'm obviously in, and I think he can be really strong, given his price, given his expectation, and what we may see from the 11. I know Joey Logano is a conundrum for me because so much of what we know, especially in the spring, he qualifies well and he sinks like a rock. And given what when the race hasn't projected for in terms of ownership, given what they think he can score, given what we think from previous runs, from all that stuff, he's probably somebody who's not going to be very popular, and probably for good reason. But is he just an auto fade for you, given where he's starting, given our expectation? Or do you think if you want to be a little different, he can be that dominator, be really good in stage one, and have a chance to win the race at the end?
So the only point of optimism I would have with Joey Logano this year, as opposed to past instances here where he qualified on the pole, is the fact that, to me, the legit contenders are all starting like 3 rows and further back from where he's starting. So I think you do have the possibility of, like you're saying, him jumping out to the lead early in stage one and leading a bunch of laps, but you're still eating the fading, because when you go back to last year, people will reference, oh, he won here in the fall, but he only won here in the fall because of the damn fuel cell in that car is, a gallon and a half larger, it seems like, than everybody else. And outside of that, he probably would have been like no better than a 10th or 12th place car. So this isn't necessarily a track where he's dominant at. He's extremely good at qualifying. And when you look at his spring performances, very similar to Phoenix, they're nowhere near as good as what he's shown in the fall when he's in the playoffs. So he's not somebody that I have confidence is going to jump out to a lead and stay up there the entire day based on long run speed, which is not something we've seen out of the 22 in this package since the Gen 7 car was unveiled in 2022.
Yeah, well, which coincidentally, the last time Joey started or finished the race closer to the front than what he started was 2021. He's consistently, had a worse finish than where his starting position was. So there's a lot of reasons to fade him, but
well, and then I think when you just look at the starting grid, you can't tell me that guys Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, William Byron, Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, even, who we haven't even gotten to that range, all don't have the possibility of passing Logano and finishing better than him just based on past performances in this package alone, not just even looking at Vegas, where they've all been better than him in the springtime. So you're already fighting an uphill battle by having a guy who's starting on the front row and hoping he could just stay out front early and maintain that track position with strategy, when there's other cars in here in the field that I think it's fair to say are better than him.
Yeah, I am simpatico with you there. I'll hit on Chase Elliott. I think both of us think he'll be like a top 10-ish car most of the day, and obviously improve on his 16th starting position. But Don't think he's going to be fighting for a race win. Don't think he'll be leading a ton of laps. And from a DraftKings perspective, is probably an easy cross off. Let's talk 8K because I think that's where things get a little interesting. Kyle Busch starting 4th, Chase Briscoe starting 24th, Ross Chastain starting 19th, and Alex Bowman starting 6th. Let's talk Watermelon Man because I think he, between the two of us, is the most compelling. Looked incredible in practice. Didn't qualify as well as we kind of thought he was going to be a legit contender. Like we were looking at his qualifying odds before the race and before the before qualifying started, and thought he was an interesting target. Obviously was fine, but like he was very mid-packy. I think, if you want to talk about another guy who may be popular but good chalk, I think we talk Watermelon Man.
Yeah, there's nobody in the sport who's been better here than Ross Chastain in the Gen 7 car. I mean, he's not a stranger to starting outside the top 10. 4 of the 6 Gen 7 visits here have all seen him start outside that mark. I mean, even last year this spring, he started the same exact spot, 20th, and he came home 4th. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that's going to be the same after what we saw in practice. And, this is something that we've grown accustomed to with the one team, is that although they lack the speed in qualifying, like when the race goes green, they're just better than a lot of other cars. And Chastain in the race is unafraid to send it into 1 or send it into 3 and 4. And so he's probably my favorite guy on the slate, with him starting where he is and the price that he's at, $8,300. I would almost rather play him than play Ryan Blaney, just because of where he's starting. You're getting like half the field already, and he has the same ceiling, in my opinion.
Yeah,
with way less risk of fighting with the squirrels.
Yep. In terms of Bowman, Briscoe, and Busch, they're all guys that are fine enough, but I don't think have any interest in playing any of them.
So I think Alex Bowman is the most intriguing of the group in this little range, just because driving for HMS, we know how good that team has been here in Las Vegas, especially in the spring. Yep. Bowman won the spring race just a couple of years ago, back in 2022, the first Gen 7 race at this track. He's no stranger to being up front here. He's already got the built-in track position. He's fighting with a guy we already spoke about, Joey Logano, who's likely to fade. Michael McDowell, he ain't staying up there. Eric Jones, he's not staying up there. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think Alex Bowman, he could possibly win stage 1 just by default, because he's the furthest HMS guy starting in the starting grid, and he's just going to have a better car than the guys that are starting in front of him. So he's somebody that can maintain the track position here too. I mean, when he's not running into problems or wrecking in the 5 Gen 7 races, he's finished inside the top 5 in 3 of them.
Yeah. Alex Bowman seems like a fun click, and he's not going to come with a lot of ownership. So if you want to be a little bit different and have an early dominator, I think he makes sense as kind of that first click. Anyone else? I think Bowman's interesting, and given what you mentioned, I think Chastain's interesting. Obviously, I think Briscoe and Busch are kind of fades. Let's talk 7Ks.
Briscoe, I got to see it before I start.
Yeah.
This
is a big week for him. We were talking a little bit, but like, really feels like this is a week where he needs to show up and actually do something, and kind of reward the 19 team for giving him the keys to the seat, because so far, outside of the pole at Daytona, it's been kind of gross.
Bubba
Wallace 20th, Ty Gibbs 29th, Brad Keselowski 27th, Christopher Buescher 11th, Austin Cindric 3rd, Suarez 23rd, Hocevar 25th. A bunch of guys kind of in that like back third of the starting grid. Obviously, Cindric starting near the front. Another guy that we expect to kind of fade quickly. And then obviously Buescher's right around that top 10. Of the guys kind of in that 20 range from, Bubba to Suarez, or I guess Hocevar, who's interesting to you? Is there anyone standing out kind of above the rest?
Well, I mean, if you've watched our show before, obviously we're going to look at Bubba, but
Yeah.
The guy starting just below him, Ty Gibbs, 9 placements worse than Bubba starting, and they should have a similar race day. And I think it's fair to say that Ty Gibbs was actually better than Wallace in this package last year. But the guy that I like in this range is the cheapest, Carson Hocevar, 7K, starting 25th. I think a lot of ownership is going to be off of him because of the other guys that are in this range with Keselowski, Gibbs, Wallace, and Suarez starting above him.
Yeah.
Of the group here, Hocevar had the best practice, and we all know how fast he can be in races where speed is kind of what gets you to the front, not necessarily driving skill or anything of that. So I think Hocevar is probably the most intriguing for me because you're saving $800 from Bubba Wallace starting 20th. You're getting those 5 extra placement points. And I think he's somebody that definitely could put this inside the top 10. And even, who knows, maybe a strategy play, get this thing inside the top 5 just based on his ability to say, F it, I'm going pedal to the metal. Like, I'm going to use somebody's car as another set of tires to get through this corner coming to the checkered flag.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really into Hocevar. I think if you want to take a shot on him in the outright market, I would be fine with that, or like a top 5 or something. But
we should have had like a show bet, because it seems like every week we go through this where I'm on Hocevar and you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I'm going to be a week late to him, and you might be a week early.
Yeah, that's true.
Interesting, but it is, I think, with Hocevar, Keselowski, Gibbs, and Wallace, they all look like they're going to have about the same ownership. Ty Gibbs is probably a wrong click, given what we've seen, what we've expected, what he looked like in practice, what he looked like in qualifying. But given where he's starting, given his price tag, given his potential upside, what we've seen at intermediates, he's definitely somebody that could pop. It's just the ownership that's going to come along with him. Like, I don't know if the potential reward is there, given what you have to risk with him.
Yeah, like, I don't know what happened to this team over the offseason or what's been going on behind the scenes, but they do not seem to be the same 54 squad that was here last year, where they actually had speed and they just had things go wrong, or it was just difficult to find victory lane. Because this year they're just not good at all. All around, it's not just the driver, it's the pit crew, it's on the box, like, just the whole operation itself kind of needs like a step back reset. And that was kind of the anticipation coming into Vegas, in that they were going to a track type that he really excelled at last year. And we didn't see it in practice. We didn't see it in qualifying. Are they going to show up on Sunday? I mean, very similar to Chase Briscoe. As high as I was on him pre-practice, I got a little bit of action on a finishing prop. I don't think I can get to that post of what I see. And it's like, I got to see it before I buy in again.
Yeah. I mean, we expected a similar kind of idea in Phoenix last week, and look, he was driving the cement truck around the track. So, man, he's a hard click for me. Yeah. And Brad's similar. Like, maybe, I don't know, he always tends to do a little bit better than where he qualifies RFK. Just, I don't know what their deal is on qualifying day, but
imagine if Chris Buescher could put his car inside like the top 5 every week.
Yeah. I think we're gonna have some interesting decisions. I think that's gonna be the range where if you can get it right, you're gonna be separating yourself. It's just because there's 4 guys that are all kind of similar price, similar range, similar expected ownership, similar expected output. You have to figure it out. We'll build some lineups and see if we can't do that with you. Let's talk 6Ks. All right. Noah Gragson 21st, Austin Dillon 22nd. Josh Berry once again just starting in the top 10. AJ Allmendinger 18th. Justin Haley 33rd. Eric Jones another starting position in the top 5. Ryan Preece, Michael McDowell, SVG. Gross, but also potential. I think Dinger 18th is interesting. I think Justin Haley starting in 33rd is interesting. And Gregson 21st is somewhat interesting. But after the interview with Riley Herbst today, I have some wonder if him and Gregson kind of have a lot of pressure on them, have a lot of family in the stands, and maybe try and do a little too much too soon and end up kind of not making them the DraftKings play that, maybe an outright bet or a top 5 or something would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think it's fair to always kind of work that into an assessment of a driver when they're racing at their hometown, especially for the young guys who
Yeah.
are, kind of newer to the Cup Series. There's a little more pressure on themselves to perform in front of family and friends. And Noah, he's somebody who's kind of popped here. Like last year in the
Yeah.
spring, he looked really good in practice, and then he unfortunately was like the first guy to go out in qualifying, so he had a shitty qualifying spot, and then he wound up bringing it home top 10. But that was also kind of a race where there was some weird cautions in the final stage, and then he made up some track position that way. So, he brought it home, like I said, 6th there. And so, I think some people are going to be high on him again because 21st, he looked good in practice. Once again, he showed some speed, but, I just don't know if I can get there. And then Dinger, I like Dinger from maybe like a betting perspective, but going back to what I was saying about Chastain starting in that like 18 to 20 range, Chastain at least presents the opportunity to win the race, whereas somebody like Allmendinger, like if he gets a top 10, you're still celebrating the fact that he got a top 10, which is only 8 placement points. And that's not even something that I think you can anticipate. So it's a little hard for me to get there. I am quite interested in Shane Van Gisbergen. I know they don't necessarily have the speed, but I think he's been getting better at just kind of like managing his tires on the 1.5s last year. And if he can even get inside the top 20, I think because of the dollars that you're saving, the less roster percentage that you're getting off of that, you're getting a little bit different from everybody else who's probably going to play Haley, who's starting 5 spots further back from him. I think that's an interesting play this week.
Yeah, I don't hate that, especially when you're in the Trackhouse garage and Ross has had so much success here. Maybe he gleans a few things. I think that's an interesting call. I think you'll be, like you said, there won't be a bunch of people joining you on that click, so I don't hate it. Let's jump into the 5K unless there's another driver in the 6K you want to mention.
No.
Okay. I think this is interesting too, because obviously the 6K offers some interesting clicks, but I think you can go down to the 5K, get similar names, save some salary, and then get maybe another elite guy at the top. Gillen, 32nd. Zane Smith, 9th. Ricky Stenhouse, 31st. John Hunter, 30th. As you mentioned, we'll be going to the back. Riley Herbst, Cole Custer, Ty Dillon, and Cody Ware. Where are you going in the 5K range?
I guess you got to go with Stenhouse. Traditionally 1.5s or any type of high speed track is kind of where he flourishes. So
Yeah.
I think of this group, he's the only one that I'm kind of like, I haven't spoiled on yet this year. I know Riley Herbst, I was high on him last week in Phoenix, and then that wound up, killing us with him getting caught up in the early caution there. So that's rough. And then going back to the narrative that you said, racing in front of family and friends, he even kind of alluded to the fact that it's his first time in the Cup ride in this race as a full timer. And it sounds like it's a little more, there's just a little more on his shoulders this week than it would say when he was in Xfinity.
Well, yeah, he was just mentioning that like a restart, he could just get 5 placements really easily, and then with this, you're if you're even if you're in 32nd, getting a placement or 2 is really hard. That being said, with Bell and with John Hunter going to the back, he's already up 2 spots. He's starting 35th. He's basically free. You know, and the 2311 experience at this track with between Bubba and Reddick, it's definitely there. So
Yeah,
he's
true.
probably going to be popular, especially given his price tag. But I don't hate jumping on, especially in something like cash. I like Gilliland too. 32nd. You know, I think he's another guy that could have a strong day. You know, we're not asking them to win the race when they're starting back here. We're just asking them to improve, have a solid finish, and make us and allow us to get other drivers into our lineups.
Yeah, the Gilly gang. I don't know.
Derailed.
I love Todd. I love Grillo's pickles. I hope we get to see that on one of his cars upcoming. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, let's build some lineups and see how gross we have to get. So I'll give you the T and let you make a click. What's the click for you?
Denny Hamlin.
Oh my God. Do you want him just to like have a horrible day? Is that your goal?
They're gonna have I think it was the race from 2023 where they had I think it was brake issues or something.
Okay, well, let's just 2311 it up. Tyler Reddick.
Oh,
Welcome to
great. All right. Okay. So let's go down to Bowman here.
Okay. I like that.
Save a little bit of salary.
I don't know if this is doable, but with we mentioned a couple guys in that like 5 to 6K range that we could be fine with.
Yeah.
And I think with Byron starting 8th, it may be a little, I don't know. I'm a little cautious to do it just because.
Yeah, but I actually like your thinking because if those 4 guys all led laps, nobody's going to bat an eye at that.
Yeah. But you want Bowman to jump to the front early and then Byron and then kind of those to be 4 of your top like 6 finishers. All right, let's go down. So I'm good with Herbst. I'm good with Gilliland. I'm good with.
What about Stenhouse and Herbst?
Okay. We do Herbst. That gets us up to 6,700. So do you prefer Dinger to Stenhouse? Do you prefer SVG to Stenhouse?
I think SVG is going to come with a lot less roster percentage.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And it's only 3 spots. He's getting to like you said, everybody's actually moving up 2 spots.
Yeah, Justin Haley's the other one that would like tempt me, but I think given how easy it is to get to Justin Haley in this instance, it might mean that SVG has even less roster percentage than I kind of expected. So let's do that one.
Gross.
Let's see if I can save it out here in the desert.
All right. Let you save it, but you can't enter it in any lineups.
Yeah, I won't be able to enter any contest, but I'll screenshot all these so we can go back and see how we did. Let's build another one. It's days like today makes me really appreciate the setup I have at the house. I'll tell you what.
Oh yeah, 100%.
All right.
Where are we starting, sir?
We're starting with the watermelon crawl. If I can click it. Watermelon Man, 19th, 8,300. Easy click. Easy click.
Kyle Larson.
Okay. Ryan Blaney.
Ricky Stenhouse.
There we go. Now we're gonna have to get off of some. Although I feel like Stenhouse might be a little more popular, given where he's starting and his price tag is easy to click on.
That's okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Justin Haley.
Or
Okay, speak to me.
I mean, you could do Gibbs.
Yeah. There's just a lot of stuff going. I think Gibbs is something where if we want to load up on Toyotas and expect JGR to be better, I think that's where we built that part.
I got it. Carson Hocevar.
Oh my God. It gets us up to Chase Elliott. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't really like Elliott.
I think we have to do. It's a lot of Alex Bowman, but it's Alex Bowman. I think the other thing we do is get rid of Blaney. And we do
Denny again.
Yeah. I mean, Logano is kind of an interesting click just given everything, but we talked about it. He's not the answer.
It's hard squeezing both Larson and Chastain in here.
We don't want to do Austin Cindric. Kyle Busch? Do we trust RCR?
No, not to stay up front. No way. This lineup is going to be dead halfway through stage 1 when Logano is running mid-pack on speed.
All right. We need to figure something out. This isn't working.
All right, what do we do, Bubba? And then that gets up to whoever we want.
Tyler Reddick?
No, you could do Blaney here.
Yeah, I feel like if even I'm fine clicking Blaney, but I think we have to I think we need somebody starting near the front. We can't just load up back markers.
Yeah, but if Kyle Larson is as strong as what we think and what the sports books think, how quickly is he going to be up front?
Pretty quickly. Why don't we just do this? It's the Larson Byron show once again.
All right. Yeah.
And then let me look at something because I think we can pivot off of Stenhouse into something that we feel more comfortable with. Although that gets us up to Jones or Priest or McDowell, and I don't love any of that.
Yeah. You can get rid of Hocevar.
We can.
And then that gets us up to Gibbs, Keselowski.
Yeah, then we're in that range again with Gibbs, Keselowski. Let's see. We get rid of Hocevar. It gets us to 7,700. Let's see. We have Chevy. We have Bubba. Why don't we get rid of Bubba? Why don't we do Brad? I don't love, but I think it's a good click.
Are we just going to do the Hendrick
Or do we
guys?
want to? Or do we? Yeah, I mean, I guess we. I don't know. I think Larson Byron is kind of our early dominators. I think Keselowski and Stenhouse and Chastain. Or do we take Keselowski out and go Bubba and Gibbs and make those our Toyotas?
Let's do that.
Okay. I hope I did it again. Bubba, Gibbs.
Well, we know what the first click of the next lineup is. Brad Keselowski.
Yeah, this is going to be Ford. So I think
Blaney, Keselowski,
and Logano.
Oh, why?
Because he starts up front, he's going to dominate stage 1 and then be a contender at the end. and he allows us to do whatever the hell we want with everything else.
Oh man.
Logano. I mean, we could do the same thing with Cindric if you really want, but I don't feel nearly as confident.
Yeah, that's a no.
It's a no for me, dog. All right, so we have our 3 Fords. We can go up, we can go down, we can stay in this range and hammer the 7Ks.
Did we use Stenhouse on the last one or no?
We did. We didn't use Hocevar if you want to click that.
Yeah, I like Hocevar here.
I know. It's gross.
I think we need somebody starting near the front again, though.
Yeah.
Because we just have Logano.
Yeah. I guess let's...
Honestly, I like Chastain here.
Okay.
Again. I mean, he's our favorite click.
Yes. I mean, Bowman is starting 6th, or we can go with a little more of a risk. All right, what about Busher?
Yeah, but he doesn't lead laps here, and he's not really a guy on 1.5 that I mean, Kansas he was last year, but Vegas is a different story.
I think we're back in that Bubba Gibbs bucket again. I mean,
you could always go to like Gragson.
Yeah, I'll say Gragson or Suarez, but I like the Gragson shout.
Yeah,
just have him get a top 10. Have Hocevar flirt with the top 10, and then it's Chastain, Blaney, and Logano going for the win.
Yeah.
Okay. We still have 1,500. Do we want to upgrade any of the spots? If we upgrade Keselowski, or we want Keselowski, we could do.
I mean, we could upgrade Joey Logano to William Byron.
Yeah, but this is our Ford lineup. We don't want to do that, do we?
Yeah, but even if you go up to 9K from Brad,
yeah,
you're only getting Busch, Briscoe. That's about it.
We could go from Watermelon Man to Denny Hamlin.
But how much of an upgrade is that, though?
It's not.
Yeah, exactly. Like
they're basically the same outright price.
Yeah. Chastain's shorter in most places.
Yeah, I mean, we stood next to both of them today, and Ross is a little man, so that makes sense. All right, let's do it. Fuck it.
Yeah, I like the Ford lineup here.
All right,
watch, well, it's gonna be Hocevar bringing it home when he wins.
Sure. If Hocevar wins, I better take an outright ticket now. Okay, 3 lineups: Reddick, Byron, Hamlin, SVG, Herbst, Larson, Byron, Chastain, Wallace, Gibbs, Stenhouse, Logano, Blaney, Chastain, Keselowski, Hocevar, and Gragson. I'm going to screenshot this. And we can go over to the betting side and talk about where we're at. So I have Hamlin at 11. Like I mentioned, he's now like 14, which is what I fired on here in Vegas. And I have Tyler. We both hit Tyler Reddick at 10. Thanks, FanDuel. You also have Chastain at 24, which I think is a really good bet, especially given what we've seen and kind of where his number has moved. And then Gibbs under 17.5, which is still out there. And I feel like we've gone back and forth on him.
Yeah.
It feels like a good bet, but like it's also Ty Gibbs. I don't know. I feel like if I'm betting Ty Gibbs, I want a little more reward for the risk. I don't feel like he's kind of a safer option. I feel like he's either 35th or like 10th.
Yeah, I feel like at this point of the season, it's not a bet that I wouldn't make that now, post practice and qualifying, just because of where he's starting and having the disappointing practice. I don't think there's value there. Do I think he does it? I still think that we see them return to the 1.5 kind of prowess that he was able to show, but does he finish there? That's another story. Like we saw that multiple times last year where whether it was a pit crew mistake or him wrecking, like he ran into a lot of issues. So I think that's something that we got to see this team do is put together an entire race and a successful one at that.
For sure. Let's look at the updated odds. So Larson, as we mentioned, is the favorite 4-1. Reddick 550, Byron 675, Bell 7, Logano 7.5. That's kind of your inside 10-1. Any interest in any of those names 10-1 or shorter?
No.
Yeah.
I think when books are pricing it this way, they have no effing clue who was good based on practice and based on qualifying, which was a topic of question that I was bringing up to multiple drivers today about the new qualifying format. And, some of them like it. Some of them were curious to see how it's going to like evolve as the season goes on, because, the Group B is going to become extremely top heavy, which means that you're going to have to put more emphasis on your previous, like you're going to have to make sure you're not wrecking in order to qualify well. And it actually came out today that the guys who qualified later in the run, they didn't even get the benefit of the doubt because they actually qualified worse than guys that were well in the middle of the qualifying session. So, it's something that's going to be an ever evolving conversation for the season with the new old qualifying format, which is single round and based on weighed heavily on previous race results. So, it's something to keep an eye on as we go. But yeah, the fact that we have so many guys inside 13-1 or even 15-1 with Hamlin, Bowman, Busch, Blaney, Chastain, Logano, Bell, Byron, Reddick, Larson. No, I don't like any of these guys. I think you just wait live. You see who has a good car in stage 1. You see who's got good long run speed, and you fire then, and you get them at 6 or 7, knowing that they're really good.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm looking at Superbook right now, and with the Bell news, they've kind of moved stuff around. So Bell's now out to 8, and Byron's down to 6. I think if you can find a 7 on Byron, it's really tempting. He's so rock solid. I feel like you're going to give yourself a real shot at the end to win. And then it just depends on like if Larson's an absolute rocket, if someone else makes an appearance, if Logano manufactures a way to get into the front at the end. It's just kind of a crapshoot. It's also interesting. There's a lot of different prices on a lot of these guys. Like Logano's double digits most places, which I feel much better about. On 750 is like absolutely not.
That's a no.
The next range is kind of compelling, but like also feels a little short. Ross at 11, like he looked good. Double digits. I don't know. That feels a little aggressive. Blaney 11, starting in the back. He had a rocket ship, but starting all the way back at the squirrel seems like a little bit of a challenge. Our friends over at Superbook have him at 8, which is I think kind of wild. Kyle Busch, Alex Bowman, as I mentioned, I bet Hamlin at 14, Chase Elliott are all kind of inside 20-1. Again, I ask you, is there anyone in this range that you're wanting to take a shot on?
I mean, we actually both bet it, but I think Hamlin at 14 is the best number you're going to get. I think it's a really good number because we know how strong Hamlin is.
Yeah.
At 1.5, and he was close last week. He ran better in Daytona and Atlanta than in past years. So 14 is a great number on him. It's probably going to get a little bit shorter. I think he also falls into that category though. Like you could probably wait and still get this at like 8, even 10, if he shows early signs of being able to make passes and still be, happy with the number that you're getting on a guy who has a really good car and is going to run top 3, top 5.
Yeah, like if he starts the race and is just like stuck in the middle and not really gaining traction, not getting positions, then maybe you'll be like, oh, dodged a bullet there. But like I said, I have him at 14. Brian has him at 14, so he's definitely crashing in stage 1 and doing an interview with Jamie or Regan. I know you have Ross, so it might be hard for you to answer this. But if you don't have any Ross exposure, what number would you want to see in order for you to say, yes, give me some of that?
With what we've seen the last couple of weeks, I know Vegas is much different because it's a traditional oval. It's a 1.5. I would have to wait until like 15, 16. There'd be no way I can take him at 12, not knowing what it's going to look like on Sunday. We've seen this so far in the last 2 weeks at both Coda and Phoenix, where practice said one thing and the race produced a completely different result. So I think you have to wait for Sunday unless you have the big numbers like with Kyle and I, Reddick at 10, or if you got Byron at 10, or like me, I got Chastain at 25. Like, I don't think you can get in right now.
Yeah. And then we could talk longer numbers, but like at that point, I don't even know if there's anybody that I'm actually considering at their current price tag. Like I want to bet the guys at the top. It's just a matter of sorting them out. I think this is a good week to find matchups that make sense, to find maybe top manufacturer, maybe a top 5, top 10 type thing, and get exposure that way. Instead of hammering the outright board.
Yeah, because even with like Larson, for instance, he's been so strong here in the past. But starting 10th, I anticipate he's going to find the front fairly quickly. But at the same time, who the hell knows? Like with Logano already having the track position, maybe Logano is just an a-hole and he blocks and he winds up wrecking with Larson early on in the race. I don't really know what to think of what we saw with practice and then qualifying, where HMS has traditionally done really well at this track. And then all of a sudden they're all qualifying 8th or worse, sorry to Alex Bowman, who qualified 6th. But I think when you look at that, it's mainly Larson and Byron who both disappointed in qualifying.
Yeah. Obviously our full betting card, all of our written up bets will be in the newsletter, which is completely free to subscribe to. If you've yet to do that, you can definitely check out today's newsletter, aoppodcast.substack.com, aoppodcast.substack.com. Go check that out. Go see our full write-ups, everything there. And consider subscribing. It's completely free. It shows up in your email inbox every race day, and then you can either fade or follow. We'll have our grid rival picks in there. We'll have DraftKings thoughts, betting thoughts, full betting card, all that good stuff. In terms of head-to-heads, Elliott versus Logano, Keselowski versus Buescher, Hamlin versus Blaney. Hamlin at plus 100 against Blaney is interesting.
So I think that's the first conversation starter, is getting a guy who we both think is going to perform well.
Yep.
Starting essentially 20 spots ahead of another car who is potentially race winning. I know maybe Blaney had a better practice. Maybe he has a better car, but how long does it take him to make up those 20 spots?
Yeah.
And even if he does make up those positions, how far forward has Denny moved at that point, making the trailing of Blaney even harder for him to catch up to Hamlin? And, Hamlin could finish 4th, and Blaney, by the end of the day, he could be 5th. But based on the difficulty of getting past cars here, where it's traditionally been really difficult to pass, especially once you get to the front and you're racing amongst guys who are of similar talent and speed, that, getting plus money on essentially what should be an even matchup based on starting position and practice and history at these types of tracks. I don't know why you wouldn't want to play this.
Yeah, I want to play it, and it scares me even more. So,
well, especially because we both got it at plus 110.
Yeah. Shouts to Superbook. Man. Josh Berry at plus 125 against Cindric is interesting. Like, do you trust Austin Cindric as a minus 155 favorite against anybody?
Hell no. That's just, yeah.
Let's see, how are we doing on? Pulling up this.
And what's really difficult too, to begin this year is that the last couple of races, Coda and Phoenix, we really haven't been able to take much out of those to say, oh, this guy's strong, this guy's strong. But, Coda was kind of a weird race. And then Phoenix with the option tire, like, I know they don't correlate to a 1.5, but usually you'd be able to kind of tell, like, oh, this guy's going to be decent and blah, blah, blah. But there's just been so many weirdness. There's been so much weirdness to the beginning of this season. It's hard to kind of anticipate how much we need to look at past results, how much we need to look at current form versus everything that's been factored in. So it's we're stuck in another week of not getting too exposed and just kind of anticipating to see who's going to perform before we start getting crazy at the books.
Yeah, I want to see the carnage come to a calm. Like I expect that to happen, but I also expected it to be pretty calm last week in Phoenix, and we had a couple big for Phoenix anyways, a couple of big wrecks. So yeah, so you can see Brian and I both added the Hamlin over Blaney. We'll be adding to our card for sure. We'll look to add some maybe some manufacturers. We'll look for some other head-to-heads. We'll be working on those. Hopefully not too late in the night, as we both got a really, really early start on Saturday morning to make sure we're out here in time for practice and qualifying. With that being said, Brian, it was good to chat it out. As I mentioned, we'll be figuring out the rest of our betting card, writing up our bets, writing up our favorite DraftKings plays, all that stuff for the newsletter. So make sure you go check that out. Give us a subscribe. We're working on growing our subscriber count over there. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert, live from Las Vegas. Anything else before we get out of here, Brian Twining?
Enjoy Sin City. If you feel like it is Vegas. Roll the dice. Pick your favorite guy. One guy. Just cheer it out. And like I said, wait for those live lines, because I think there will be some opportunity just watching the race early on to see who has a fast car, and that will be your chance to grab more exposure to drivers that actually have good cars, that we know have good cars.
We'll be chatting with you next week. I'll be back home for sure. I think Brian will probably be back home by Tuesday.
I will still be in Vegas on Tuesday.
Still be in Vegas. So Brian will be here in Vegas, but I'll be home. We'll recap the card. We'll get you an update on kind of how the week went, and then we'll turn our attention to Homestead, because Miami, another road trip for the Brian Twining. Going to be interesting. I'm excited to see that race. I think this is going to be a good jumping off point for Homestead.
Yep.
If we're talking about another driver here in 3 weeks going for that 3 in a row, and its name's Kyle Larson, I can't say I would be shocked. So we'll keep an eye on that. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. We'll talk to you next.